Welcome to Iron and Ceramite, Librarius Omnis, where we explore the depths of the Black Library.
Welcome everybody to another edition of Librarius Omnis from Iron and Ceramite. Once again, I'm joined by John.
Hello.
And you join us as we go. We're in part 5 now, so this is the 5th edition of our discussion of Mechanicum. So we're in part 5, but we're finishing off part 2. So, you know, as per usual, we've taken our time and we've gone into exhaustive detail to bring you everything you need from what's going on in this book, and hopefully a few interesting, you know, discussion points and bits and pieces that come through that as well. Obviously, if you haven't listened to the other bits and pieces, the other parts that we've covered, you go back and give them a listen. We are going to dive pretty much straight into the second half of part 2, but as a quick recap of where we've got up to, we've obviously seen lots and lots happen. We've been introduced to the Titan legions. We've been introduced to some of the adepts, some of the forges that exist on Mars, some of the history between the Imperium and Mars. There's a lot of dense detail in this book. But the key beats that have happened is that there's friction between a couple of the night houses, Legio Mortis, as well as the night houses of Tyrannus and Tempest.
That's right.
Yep, got that right. And obviously, so there's a bit there, and you can see that there's factions on Mars. There's Kelbor Howe, the current fabricator general, with a couple of his lackeys or pals, who have already, up to this point, spoiler alert, started to fall to chaos and are clearly siding with the War Master because they're going to give them what they want. And on the other side, you have people like Coriel Zeph, or Adept Zeph, and Pluvium Maximel, who are both adepts, Forge Masters, one mistress of the Magma City, the other being the Forge Master of Mars. And these factions are building on the Red Planet, forcing it down the road towards civil war. Yeah. There's a chaotic scrap code going around, causing all sorts of problems. While all of this was happening, or just before all of this happening, Coriel Zeph also launched her Astropath reader. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah,
something like that. Close.
Yeah. Another hard thing to pronounce.
Yes, something that fed off the light of the Astronomicon, powered by psychers, grimdark as ever, reveals all knowledge, and when all knowledge is revealed, knowledge is no longer power. That comes up in a bit. Someone says that. Spoiler alert. But while that's been happening, obviously, at that point, our hero, one of our main protagonists, what's her name?
Dalia.
Dalia, good old Dalia, of course, the center of all this. Dalia, you know, a lowly transcriber brought from Terra to Mars under Coriel Zeph's command. She has decided she doesn't quite trust anyone, so she's going to hop on the good foot and go looking for the Noctis Labyrinthus, something like that. Where, yeah, Space Latin, I believe, is how we referred to it in the last video, where they're looking for the Dragon of Mars, the famed Dragon of Mars, and she's joined by various powers that she was brought to build the reader with. So Zeus, Severin, Caxton, and a protector designated to her by Zeph, Romeo 31. And then we've also got someone that stayed behind, and that's Melisyn, who was looking after the team and said she would stay behind, but also make sure that she had no knowledge of their whereabouts. Yeah. And so they're effectively on the maglev, or, you know, a fancy word for a train, that's been heading out all the various outposts on Mars as they head towards this labyrinth. And I think that's pretty much where we join the story now, right, John?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and like I say, if we've missed anything, hopefully, if you're watching this video, you've seen the others. So it isn't a big deal if we've missed anything because we've done it already.
Absolutely.
So we'll jump straight in, I think. Chapter 5, part 2 of book 9 of 48 parts or whatever we've done so far.
yeah, a lot of hours.
Yeah,
a lot more to go.
But it's all good fun. So we will kick off with Adept Zeph. She's back, or she's not back. She hasn't left her forge, and she's currently with her apprentice Magos Polk, and the dreaded Melgator is making his way to the ambassador that is clearly in the pocket of Kelbor Howe. So at the minute, she's waiting for him to arrive. He's a bit of a distance away, but she uses her enhanced vision to get a good look at him and suss him out before he arrives. And she notices that he looks a lot thinner than the last time that she saw him, almost as if he was unwell. He's got really dark eyes and looks like he's just brimming to spread some bad news. The more worrying thing is his companion, a slender female figure, a gleaming synthetic body glove, clearly a tech priest assassin. So Polk can't contain his fear and also confusion as to why Melgator would need an assassin. He's already got bodyguards at his disposal, and Zeph essentially tells him to chill out and play it calm and get his poker face on, although she's quite worried that she may be about to be found dead laying on the floor of her own forge. So I don't know too much about tech priest assassins. Shane, do you want to fill in my blanks?
To be honest, there isn't that much detail. Like they're not too different to Imperial or Imperium assassins, other than the fact they've got a few more wires and various bits and pieces going on. They're not part of the assassin clades that you see on Terra, but they're no less deadly. So they are just fairly standard. But this particular one, what's the name? Remiar. Like everything on Mars, everything is tech priest orientated. They are highly augmented and are highly, that they are very much more machine than wetware, as it's also referred to in the book as it goes on. And they, their humanity's been stripped. They've got all sorts of cool little gadgets and things that they can do to effectively be very nasty in hurting people, whether that be wiping, just killing them, to actually finding the data that lies within. And we see that a little bit when Remiar goes about her work shortly.
So thank you for that. Zeph welcomes Melgator and introduces Polk to them, and Melgator introduces his companion, the assassin. So they sort of walk into the forge together, and Melgator says that he's come as a huge shadow looms above the planet, and these times require friends to stand together. And he hopes that Zeph will count Kelbor Howe as a friend. And she asks, well, why is this even a question? There's never been any displeasure expressed towards me or my work. And Melgator says that he's been sent in the spirit of peace to extend feelings of goodwill. And Zeph says, so if you're trying to bring goodwill, why have you brought an assassin with you? And he tries to play it off as it's because his life is being threatened and the way of life is being threatened. So they have to take these extra precautions until they know who's friends with who. And Zeph sort of asks, well, who is the threat? And if we know there's a threat, does the Fabricator General know who released this scrap code? Melgator tells her there are suspects, but before he tells her anything else, he wants to know why her forge escaped complete devastation. Because as we know, when the scrap code was released, it was not good for anybody, but Zeph's on the Wi-Fi, so she wasn't plugged in, and her and a few of her friends got away with it. So she's not actually too sure though. She knows that she got lucky, but she doesn't know how much Melkor knows about what she's been up to. So she keeps her guard up and hopes that Polk has activated his Aegis Barrier to prevent any of his data or his thoughts being transferred through the noosphere to anyone to see. Because as we know through Dalia, all these guys on Mars emit their thoughts and sort of feelings in invisible code around them. And we learned Dalia, because of her skill, can actually see this. So obviously all the other adepts and stuff can see it too. So she tries a bit of a half-truth and says, like, it must be my work at adapting the noosphere, or the Wi-Fi, as we've been calling it, that helped. And Melkor isn't having it. He knows both Kane and Maximal use the noosphere, but they suffered quite badly compared to her. And he asks her what else she has going. And she obviously doesn't tell him too much. And he suggests it may be the secret operation within your forge, something to do with all the psychers that you were sneaking inside. And Zeph feels quite sick knowing that he knows even a hint of this.
Yeah.
And like, how do you know anything about what's going on inside my forge? And basically, we know that nothing on this planet is a secret. The machines themselves love to share their secrets and any data, whether it's voluntarily or they just do it, because obviously everything has its own mind on this planet. But Melkor sort of says, well, maybe there's a spy that you don't know about. And he takes another little swing at it and says that, look, the Fabricator General's now gathering all true sons and daughters of Ares to the defense of Mars against our enemy. And Zeph says, well, who is this enemy then? You've been going on about it. Who is it? And to her horror, he turns and says, the enemy is Terra, which takes her obviously completely off guard. And he says, look, the Great Crusade is coming to an end, and we know the Emperor is planning on turning his attention to Mars. And Zeph says, well, that's insane. And he says, look, why would the Emperor conquer the galaxy, bring everyone in line, destroy the Xenos, have everybody under his way, but leave Mars free to carry on different to Terra? And so Zeph says, well, this is why you've brought the assassin. So I can't, like, in her head, she can't outright call him a traitor and then have him executed on the spot. And that's why the assassin's here. And Melgasor's attitude changes from pleading to be a friend to quite menacing, and says to her, choose your next words carefully. And she says, are you going to have this assassin kill me now? And Melgasor says, look, I'm not stupid enough to anger the Omnisire by killing an adept in our own forge, and which Zeph thinks is hypocritical to talk about the Emperor breaking faith with Mars, yet using him as an excuse not to murder me. And this is like where some of the politics have come into, which we've seen a little hint of before, when we've had all the meetings going on and everyone falling out, because Melgator now says that the Omnisire and the Emperor are not the same thing.
Yeah.
Which for generations on Mars has been the belief.
It's been hotly debated. There's an arm of people that are not, it's where the schism comes in, right? It's something that everyone agrees there's an Omnisire, and some of them think it's the Emperor. Some of them aren't sure, and then we'll come into it in a little bit.
Some of them are still claiming to be part of the Judean People's Front.
Splitters.
So she says, look, you either need to kill me or get out. I've had enough of it. And Melgator turns to leave and warns her that, look, if you turn your back on the Fabricator General, that's a dangerous move. But they leave on obviously poor terms. And he heads towards his transport, relishing the fact that he's going to get to report to Kelwahau Zeph's words, and this is all the excuse they're going to need to come back and take this city from her. And Melgator tells his assassin that Zeph has been lying to him about how they escaped the destruction, and the assassin agrees, says, look, that Polk, the apprentice, he was bleeding fear and information into the noosphere, so he clearly didn't have his blocker on, and she's managed to store everything that she could, that she read from him, and will upload the data when they return to Olympus Mons. Melgator is surprised that she was able to do it, And she says, look, this is a skill that's known only to the Sisters of Cydonia. And Melgator asks about the Aegis Barrier, and she says it was easy. I overcome that. He didn't even know I was there, but I've burnt out his memory anyway. And Melgator says, if he didn't know why you're there, then why destroy his memory? And she turns with a bit of a smile, saying that she enjoys watching living things suffer. From now on, he's no longer going to have the ability to remember anything. His usefulness as a person is over. Melgator is not actually overjoyed to learn of this ability, but doesn't say anything, which is actually obviously quite terrifying because
it's pretty cold, right? This dude didn't do anything. This poor, again, grimdark, far future. Life doesn't mean that much, and she's like a cat with a mouse. It's like doesn't really care. She just wanted something to do, so she effectively like nukes his brain, and that's it.
Yeah, for pretty much no reason.
No, just because she could.
Yeah,
she could do it, so she did it.
No.
You know, as I said, not very nice. These sisters of Sardonia, the old tech priest assassins.
Yeah.
But
she's getting paid, so she might as well enjoy it.
That's all right. But it all comes around. Remember that, because that's foreshadowing for probably our next part.
So going back on topic, he asks the assassin how Zeph could have avoided the attack from the scrap code, and Romeo doesn't know, and she actually says neither does Zeph, but she caught some data suggesting that there is a human named Dalia Cytheria that is responsible, and Melgator wants her eliminated as soon as possible, but Romeo tells him that Dalia's biometrics are not registering within the forge. There is only one other person in the forge other than Zeph who knows where she's gone, and Melgator sends her to find Melusine and find everything that she knows. So you don't want to be Melusine right now.
Not really. You don't want a tech priest assassin who can melt your mind just by being near you, coming after you for information.
No. So last we saw Dalia, she was with the rest of the group at the Maglev station, and they'd been captured or caught by Romu, who surprisingly agreed to go with them. So they catch their train, and with the bonus of having a protector with them, they're able to get a private car rather than just in standing room only. And were able to sit, although it was cramped. They were in a little private space. They've been traveling for a little while now. The others at this point, when we join them, all appear to be asleep, but Dalia has been struggling to sleep because of the fear of this thing that's lurking in the darkness that keeps speaking to her in her dreams. And I think it's more of this unknown voice that keeps talking to her more than anything else. Zooch sort of wakes up and says, what do you think we're going to find? And she says, I don't know. There's something out there is trapped in darkness and could be suffering. And potentially, if we find it, we might be able to set it free, or at least figure out what to do. And he asks, what if this thing is being punished and deserves to suffer, and we're going to do the wrong thing by freeing it? And she sort of hits back saying that nothing deserves to suffer forever. We need to help it regardless. And Zooch goes on to say that he disagrees because on his home planet, Nusa Kambangan used to be a prison planet, used to keep all sorts of the worst kinds of criminals like rapists, murderers, and tyrants. And there was one particular tyrant there called Cardinal Tang, was captured once he was defeated. And he was sent there, and he got his throat slit by another prisoner. And Zooch feels that he got off lightly because Tang actually killed his parents in a torture camp. And it was because of what we sort of touched on earlier. It was the crime of falling in love, because his planet were had a breeding program where they take two matching and appropriate partners and make them breed to create superior children, but they fell in love and they gave birth to Zooch, and for the crime of that they were put into a death camp. And obviously, so in fairly rightful opinion, this guy got off lightly by getting killed, because why wouldn't you want to see this guy suffer?
Yeah, so Zuch is definitely carrying a bit of baggage on this one.
Yeah, but they sort of, like learning about each other and a bit of backstory, and like Dalia reassures him and says, like, "I'm glad you're here. You're not like a second-class citizen. You're a good friend," and sort of they agree to keep that to themselves and put it behind them. And he obviously, we know he's very techie himself, so he manages to link himself into the train and read the pilot's cabin, and says that it's going to take us another 2 days to reach the outlying hub of Mondus Gamma, sorry.
Gamma, yep.
And we've got a number of stops to make because we're riding a supply train. We're going to go to some places called Crater Edge, Junetown, and Red Gorge. And I was going to do this, but Dalia's already done it. She points out the lack of creativity in the town names. And I also think, I don't know if it's a Martian thing or if the author just went, you know what, I've named enough crazy things. Let's keep this simple because it doesn't matter.
You know, I actually think it's a little bit like Western. So if you go back to like Westerns and like America during the Wild West and stuff like that, they're all called things like Dry Gulch and, you know, stuff like that because they're just, you know, no one's there. They just name it after what's around. So it's like, well, this is the edge of the crater's edge. Like, I think that's it. I think it's a nod. I feel like it's a nod to that rather than, you know, the author just being like, oh, fucking bit. Let's just put anything in. We'll sort it in the edit, and then they just forgot to do it.
Yeah, town A, B, and C.
Yeah.
No, that's a good. I like that. Hopefully, that's the way it is. You're more positive than I am.
Yeah, they were like, we don't need to use space Latin for these areas. Well, you know, it's just Crater's Edge.
Crater's Labyrinthius.
Yeah.
So going back to some bad news, I guess. Melisande, we're going to go back to her. She's laying on her bed in her room, trying to sleep, but all she can think about is Dalia. She feels guilty and conflicted. She knows that she's done the right thing by telling Zeph, but feels that she might have betrayed the trust of her friends. And she never expected to actually become friends with them, but they went through a lot together. But it was between loyalty to, obviously, the Forge and new friends, but she thinks she's done the right thing.
Yeah.
She does wish that she hadn't wiped her memory, though, so she could track the movements via the Martian network and sort of keep that link with her friends. But
keep tabs on what they're up to.
Yeah. But she's decided, I'm not going to sleep, so I'm going to get up and do something productive. So she gets up and goes across her hab to make some caffeine, sits down by a window in a chair, looks out across the Magma City, and sort of says to herself, wherever you are, Dalia, I wish you well. And then she suddenly paused and realized that she wasn't alone. Her bio surveyor picked up another life form in the hab, and a voice in the shadows said, I wondered when you would notice me. Melisande tried to mask her shock and surprise and said, I knew you were there. I was waiting for you to announce yourself. An obvious lie, comes the response. And she asked who this intruder was, but the intruder says it's irrelevant. You won't remember it soon. But for the record, it's Romare. Melisande went from annoyed to terrified as she saw the golden death mask and realized who this woman was.
Yeah.
And Romare told her she wanted her to tell her where Dalia and her friends were going. Melisande triggered her silent alarm and knew that Zeph would realize she was in trouble, and a squad of protectors would be now on their way to save her. She just needed to stall long enough for them to arrive. And Melisande said, look, I don't know where Zeph is. I don't know where she's going. Dalia is or where she's going. Zeph made me erase the record. And the assassin said, well, that's bad news for you then, Melisande. The data cores may have been erased, but the flesh inside will retain the information. She produces a data spike from her finger, pins Melisande against the window, and Melisande screamed, telling her she didn't have the information she wanted. And Romare says, you do. I just need to dig deep enough. And that pushes us into chapter 6. So, yeah, the first of the gang to die, Melisande.
Yep.
Horrible for her.
Yeah, like something that she thinks, you know, she was almost defiant, like, you know, you're not going to find it, I've deleted it, there's no way you can get it. And then she's like, this assassin, this very grim figure, It's like, oh no, there's a way I can get it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no. So yeah, it's a nice try, but yes, unfortunately, Melisand's time is days are numbered. Time is numbered because there's not much. Yeah, it's not going to last long. No.
I wonder though, if she hadn't deleted it and she'd given up the information, do you think she'd have been spared?
No, because she said at the beginning, didn't she? You're not going to remember it soon. She would have lobotomized her like the other dude.
Oh, Polk.
I think this assassin is happiest when she's.
She just loves killing.
Yeah, I think she does. Yeah.
Everyone in this book just loves killing, don't they? Well, in this universe.
Yeah, everyone seems a bit up for it, don't they?
Yeah. So Princeps Cavalerio, who always dreaded his fate that he was living now, but now that he's there, he realized that his body had been aging and weak, and now in the amniotic fluid, he is all powerful. In his virtual simulations, he had killed foes like a metal god and felt more alive now than before. His flesh life was over. The life of metal had truly begun. His body, alive only in part, was submerged in nutrient-rich fluid held up by a load of wires and poles and bits and pieces, while everything else was direct from his brain into machine. The transition had been difficult. Parts of his body had been chopped off and wires and cables put in every part that remained, but now he felt stronger than ever. His famulus Agape had been with him every step of the way to help him through. He still felt the loss of his machine, the victorious Magma, and had been absolutely devastated to realise that they hadn't been able to salvage it.
Yeah.
But he's obviously going through training now to rehab that, because as we learned from what's his name? It'll come to me in a second. Cronus.
Yeah,
Cronus or Maven?
The guy. Yeah, Cronus,
Maven.
the rider of Pax. Oh, Maven. Yeah. The Equitus Felon, the guy that gets done at the beginning.
Yeah, because obviously, like, just on a smaller scale, even when his was just damaged, we learned that that was driving him mad, and he was almost going to get killed, saving it from getting scrapped.
Yeah.
So we know, like, they take this really seriously, or like, they feel it really personally when these things die.
They have a connection to them from years of being plugged into them.
The Princeps, he's been going through all sorts of simulations, practice battles, and as this latest one came to an end and the real world came back into focus, he saw that Agape was stood nearby the tank, and she was not alone. She was stood with Princess Sharak, and Cavallero boasted straight away about his newfound skill and said, "Look, I'm back. I've got my mojo back. My confidence is back. I'm good at doing what I do best." And Sharak asks how he feels now in this current state, and asks him if he misses his flesh. And surprisingly, the Stormlord tells him that he would recommend everyone who commands a larger engine should adopt this style, give up their body, and jump in the tank. And Sharak is unconvinced. He seems awkward until Cavallero tells him, "Look, I don't begrudge you taking command of the Legio. It was the right thing to do." And Sharak is relieved to hear that, but says he doesn't regret doing it. He still feels like Cavallero isn't fit to take over, but he's come for some advice. And up until now, Cavallero had been disconnected from the outside world because obviously he's needed his strength to get fighting fit, and they've kept him protected, and hasn't been aware of anything that's happened since he almost died. And Sharak tells him that they are on the brink now of open warfare. A summons has been issued by the council to bring the Fabricator General and Princeps Camulos of Mortis to answer for their actions, but they have ignored the summons, which is completely unheard of. Sharak tells him that they've received at least 17 requests from other forges begging them to walk on their behalf.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what to do, and offers to upload all the latest data to get him up to speed, which obviously he agrees to. Within moments, Cavallero knew everything that had happened. Saddened to learn the Mechanicum was not much different than mankind in the end. Mars was now splitting into factions. Some were demanding an end of the union of Mars and Terra, whilst others wanted to cling tighter to the Emperor. And worst of all, the divided gone-off world spread by both sides as supply ships were sent to the front lines or astropathic visions sent out to envoys accompanying the expedition fleets. Among the data, the name of Horus the War Master was repeated. Sharak explained that all the legions wishing to split from Terra were citing his name as the one who would lead the rebellion, but no one knows what his involvement actually is. They've been trying to contact Terra, but the comms are being blocked. Maximal has been the only one who's been able to make any contact, but it's been dodgy at best. And Terra seems lost and as confused as Mars is. All we know is something bad has happened in the Istavan system, something to do with the Astartes, but no one can tell us what. The only clear message they have had from Terra is the Mechanicum needs to quell the unrest on Mars, or the legions will do it for them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not a good report to get when you feel it. He was probably just feeling good, and now he's like, "Oh, this is the situation. Well, the worst situation you could hope for."
Well, yeah, he's getting into it. He's starting to feel like, okay, this can work for me. This is good stuff. I can do this. And then he effectively realizes that Mars is plunging towards civil war. The Imperium as a whole is potentially on the brink of civil war.
Yeah.
At a time of chaos, they need clarity, and the only people they can get clarity from, Terra is not answering. They're being blocked for whatever reason, scrap code and so on. And so it's a bit of a shit show for those that consider themselves on the side of good.
Yeah, but so I think the worst thing is that they're asking what's going on, and all they've been told is, we don't know, sort out your own planet.
Yeah, quell the unrest. Otherwise, we're going to send the Space Marines in to sort it out for you.
Yeah, and no one wants that, especially
Shoot first, ask questions later.
yeah, and that's if they bother to land.
Yeah, this is true.
So he's got some decisions to make, which I'm sure we will come back to shortly.
Mm-hmm.
So the Maglev is making good time on its eastward journey. Dalia feels like she's on the way to a predetermined destiny, which is a strange feeling because she feels like she has no real control, and she's just being directed by some unknown entity. And within a couple of hours of setting off, the feeling of excitement had all but left their group, and they were actually starting to become bored, and they'd run out of things to say, because obviously before they had this whole project to work on, and that's how they bonded, and now they're just sat in a smelly train cab looking at each other. And even the idea of visiting these new settlements had turned out to be a disappointment, as they were only going to train stations and there was nothing really to see.
Yeah, turns out that some little town called Crater Edge, there isn't much to do.
Who'd have thought it? Though I wonder what's in the gift shop. It must just be like cups that look like craters.
Yeah,
that's it. Just like beer mugs and stuff, and the odd key ring. That's it. So as they approached Ash Border, they roused themselves to review a new frontier town. No one was expecting any trouble, but Dalia saw Romu's threat specs switch to active. She kept that to herself, though, something that was repeated at every station. But wherever they stopped, the inhabitants would just appear long enough to collect the load, collect or load cargo, and then disappear again. When they arrived in Crater's Edge, it was completely abandoned. Cargo was unloaded as usual, but no one came for it. And this time, they all felt much happier when they left that town behind. Something had felt off, nothing physical, but the strange sound of wet code laughter lingering in the air. Red Gorge was deserted, but the feeling was stronger there. And this time, both Dalia and Romu became aware that the other one had felt it, but they silently agreed, again, not to worry the others. They then travelled for about 2 days. The deserted towns they'd been to, obviously very unsettling, and it felt like the towns weren't abandoned, but as if they were empty like the people had vanished or not, or just never been there. Severin offered up that maybe the inhabitants had been press ganged into work, telling them that if a forge master realised they'd miss a quota, they would send the protectors out to capture people and force them to work. And Caxton said, that's ridiculous, that's just a story, and puts it to Romu 31 and says, have you ever done that for Zeph? And Romu says, I have done from time to time, which just shuts everyone up.
Yeah, they're like, oh, what?
He gives nothing away, but Dalia can see the amusement moving through his electro field and turns away so she doesn't laugh and give away the joke. The others were all horrified and started shouting and accusing him of obviously committing some crimes until after a few moments pass, he turns around and says, got ya. Another pause of confusion before everyone broke into laughter and relaxed again. So he still has a sense of humour.
Oh, Romu. Yes, he does. Even though he's mostly machine, humanity still exists there somewhere.
I can imagine like how that must come across though, because it doesn't seem like he's got like any sort of accent in his voice. I would imagine he's very robotic. So
yeah,
even the joke must have been scary.
Very deadpan, very robotic, very deadpan, and they would have just been like literally what? The only reason they would have known it was a joke, or like the only reason Dalia knew it was a joke is because of her magic, electronic filled senses she's got. Because otherwise none of them would have known it was a joke. And it would have been like, Jesus Christ, we're on a train with a nutcase.
I mean, they probably still don't feel too much better with him.
No.
But so once they sort of pick themselves back up, Zooch again hooks himself into the maglev and hooks up a display to a feed from the front of the train so everyone can see where they're going. And they suddenly take a sharp dive down into a tunnel. And Dalia freaks out, grabbing Caxton again. And she says, I hadn't realised we'd be going through darkness. And he said, don't worry, it's just a tunnel. It's nothing to worry about. Oh, how wrong he will be.
Indeed, yeah.
That's famous last words as well. Nothing to worry about.
Poor old Caxton.
So a couple of hours later, the forces of the Fabricator General arrived at the Magma City, coming for Adept Zeph.
Yeah.
A heavy Mechanicum flyer landed on the statue-lined causeway, burning the marble black with its oversized jet engines, emitting code demanding that Zeph present herself. 300 modified Skitarii and protectors emerged from the ship, twisted versions of their former selves. They formed up into 3 large cohorts and marched on to the Vulcan Gate. Melgator and Regulus rode atop of a shield palanquin, which was carried by a freakishly large and modified Skitarii. They now wore robes of black with the hoods covering their heads, Melgator carrying a staff topped by a snarling wolf's head, and Regulus a staff of ivory topped with a skull made of black obsidian. Clearly the good guys in their new uniform.
Yeah, they've fully embraced it this time round. Yeah. That's it. We're now in. We can wear what we like.
Yeah.
And we like evil looking shit.
Yeah. Yeah. If this doesn't convince you that we're on the good side, then nothing will.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they pressed in on the Vulcan Gate, spewing out scrap code from the Vox. The gate began to open, and Regulus raised his staff, streaming harsh techno-linguistics, and the servo turrets protected the perimeter shut down one by one. Zeph walked through the open gate and demanded to know what they were doing coming to the city in force. Regulus told her it was on the authority of the Fabricator General, and Zeph winced as he spewed out in dirty code. He corrected her, telling her it was pure. It was supposed to be like this before it was tied to flesh, and she demanded that they say their piece and leave. But Melgator told her they were there to take her to Olympus Mons so she could await judgment from the Fabricator General. And they tell her it's because of her continued heresies, her denial of the machine god, her refusal to support the Fabricator General, and allowing a non-cult Mechanicum personnel to work on divine machinery. And they were arresting her for tech heresy. She laughed at them, which upset them, obviously, telling them that what they were saying was ridiculous. And if they hadn't been blinded by Kelbel Howe, they would have seen it too. She pointed at the twisted army before her and told them this was proof that they were wrong. They had turned beauty of the Mechanicum into something grotesque, and she refused their right to accuse her. Obviously, like what we just said, they've turned up with all this goth stuff.
Yeah.
Wearing their black metal clothes, and they're trying to act like the good guys.
Yeah. It's just like, come on.
Yeah. It must be so frustrating for her to be like, just look clearly.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, they're not even trying to hide it, right?
Yeah.
They're using her apostasy, her denial of the machine god as an excuse to get rid of her.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Obviously, her pointing out the obvious really upsets Melgator, and says, if you're not going to come willingly, then we will take you by force. And she says, you can try. Melgator pointed at her defenses, saying, you can't resist. We control your code now. And as he was saying it, 2 9-meter tall knights appeared behind Zeph, the bold blue armor complementing the red glow of the Magma city. The advancing enemy Skitarii floundered as a dozen more knights came into view behind those. Zeph introduced the 2 lead knights as Lord Catarix and Preceptor Stator of the Order of Tyrannus. They are now her allies, and if the ship isn't gone within 5 minutes, they will blast it off the face of the red planet. Melgator calls her a disgrace for threatening the emissaries, and she bites back, how dare they, when you destroyed the mind of my apprentice and murdered one of my acolytes. So we know that poor Melisande didn't last very long.
She didn't. No, that's it. We were spared the details, but we know she's not there anymore.
Yeah, the knights stopped the arguing by stepping forward, and the dark Mechanicum forces retreat. Lord Catarix had wanted her to let them kill them, but she said, you will get the chance. They'll come back, and they won't be so arrogant next time. We need to petition the help of Legio Tempestus, and in the meantime, I suggest that we prepare for battle. I would have loved to have been there, though, like a fly on the wall when she was talking to Polk straight after that.
Yeah,
and that must have been.
Hello, like, are you ignoring me? It's just like dribbling out the side of his mouth.
Yeah, just like absolutely. Like I imagine that he's been melted down for parts by now.
Well, we'll see.
Well, yeah.
We will see.
There's a hint there. And we move into chapter 2.07, the last chapter in part 2.
Yep.
So the train, don't worry, there's nothing to worry about, is speeding through the tunnel.
It's just a tunnel. It's okay.
Yeah, we love tunnels. You've been fearing for the dark for nothing. And Dalia's clinging to Caxton for dear life, looking out the window and only seeing darkness, making her feel worse. And she starts to have a panic attack, helplessly crying into Caxton's robe. The others don't really know what to do. And Romu steps forward, kneeling in front of her, pulling her away from Caxton, and makes her look straight at him and says, look, Dalia, there's nothing to worry about. You're having a panic attack. It will pass. We are perfectly safe. And he begins to link his biometrics to hers and tries to force her to stabilize her breathing. And after a few minutes of talking to her, he's able to help her snap out of it. Dalia feels stupid, knowing she's not scared of the dark, but she can't explain what's making her act like this.
Yeah.
And Severin says that following the accident, you must be feeling the emotions of the dragon that we're trying to find. It's clearly had a glimpse of daylight and before being forced back into the darkness, and now you must be feeling its fear. And Romu asks Zooch to check how long they had until they're out the tunnel, and he frowns as he checks his connector and says, according to the servitors, we're slowing down. There appears to be something on the track, and he turns the screen towards them. And outside, rumbling towards the maglev, was what looked like a tall, spherical robot. Well, we know what that is, so maybe there is something to worry about.
Yes, I would say so.
Yeah, mounted to a track with a pair of heavy weaponized arms either side. The maglev stopped suddenly, and for an eerily long time, this machine just stared at them, and they stared back through the pick screen. Dalia reached out through her connection to the ether, searching for an answer. Finding the name of the machine was Caban. In a brief moment of connection, Dalia understood and looked at Romu 31 in fear. It's here to kill me. So the data has been passed from assassin to assassin robot.
Yeah.
And they've tracked her down. And with that, the Caban opens fire, turning the front cabin into a ball of flame. Romu grabbed Dalia out of her seat and slammed her to the floor as the Caban rolled forward, obliterating the train carriage by carriage. Without hesitation, the group left their cabin and ran down the halls, trying to outrun the screams and explosions from behind. Romu picked up Dalia and cleared his own path through the crowds of people blocking the hall. Most people were so used to obeying the protectors that they actually moved out of the way. And Dalia looked behind as a beam of white hot light cut through the rear portion of the cabin, screams flying out as they were obliterated by this beam. Romu dived to the floor as the white beam passed over them. And as he's dived, he's tripped Caxton down with it, luckily, and Severin was fast enough to follow down. And luckily, Zooch was knocked over in a stampede as the light came back over their heads, cutting through metal and flesh alike. Blood and molten metal flicked all over the place. They tried to get their bearings as the carriage was flipped over and the track left the track, landed hard on its side, shattering glass that wasn't already smashed. Dalia came to quite quickly, seeing the horrifying amount of dead bodies scattered through the carriage. Romu was nearby. He was alive, but with a jagged bit of metal through his shoulder. Zooch was laying down, covered in blood, but whether it was his blood or not, she couldn't tell. Caxton had been pinned to the floor by a big metal door, and Severin lay under a machine with her arm twisted at a horrible angle. For now, they were all alive, and she began to crawl towards Romu, but he raised a hand and gestured for her to stop. Suddenly, she heard the creaking outside as the Caban rolled towards them, scanning for life signs, making ready to kill any survivors within. That reminds me of, have you seen War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, where that beams like turn everyone into dust?
Yeah.
That's just sort of what I imagined when you're reading that. And you're like, they're running, looking back, just seeing people going all over the place. Right.
Yeah. This machine, this thinking machine, is very brutal, very difficult to deal with. You know, it's causing problems now. It's caused problems earlier in the book, and will go on to cause further problems.
Oh yeah.
It's what I like. It's obviously being built against the guides, so it uses it has forbidden technology, AI, but not artificial intelligence as we know it. Abominable intelligence, as it is called in the world of 30k plus. So they still call it AI, but rather than artificial, it's abominable.
Just to make it clear, or less clear for us,
it's definitely not allowed.
No, big no. So that's what we'll leave them for the time being. So Princeps. I always say princess. It's come up a couple of times. I quite like it. You know, it adds a Disney flair to the grim dark. Well, you never know. We might be seeing this on the Disney Channel one day. Or
it's
Disney
very
Plus.
true. Yeah, very true.
Anyway, the Stormlord. It's easier to say that. He finally finishes processing the recent data, and thanks to the code scrubbers, most of the comms links were now up and running. Fresh reports and pleas for help were streaming in, and the picture of Mars was very bleak. He allowed himself to leave the realms of data and be present in real time, and began to process his surroundings. Agatha stood to one side of him, and he saw he was positioned in the place of honor in the chamber of the first, in front of a giant god machine of his legio, the Deu Tempestus. The other princeps were all present, waiting for orders, some pacing impatiently, others staring in grim focus. They had all gathered at his order, and Sharak may have taken command, but the legio would not walk without his command. He addressed them seriously and explained that the planet was now in turmoil. The Titan legions have yet to act, but in doing so, they would begin a war that could not be turned away from. The only way to end is to pick a side and annihilate the enemy. He had never wished to see this day, but they are warriors and cannot stand by and watch allies be destroyed by evil. They must stand firm in the defense of the planet. Mortis tried to get them to goad them into shooting first at a time where they could not have succeeded. But now they have managed to regroup, and he's going to unleash the power of his Legio. They will rise to the defense of Mars, and together they will scour the enemy from the red planet. So surprised, Cassim asks how he will walk with him. His Titan has been destroyed and cannot be saved. And the Stormlord agrees and says, I will walk alongside you as I have always dreamed. I will make my last walk and become one with the first god machine of our Legio, the Deus Tempestus. And the word is given, Tempestus goes to war, which is awesome. Like, now we're going to see this absolute beast of a machine walk that I don't think they've ever seen walk. It's just, what is it? It's been built, it's been ceremonial. And now
the first Titan, but it's it's a real cool moment, because you're like, yeah, this is going to be good.
Yeah. All right, and that's the thing, and everyone's shocked. Like they thought probably he was going to hang about in his little chamber and just let them go.
Yeah.
And he's not missing it. It's interesting. He says this is going to be his last walk, though.
Oh, he says, yeah, he's got it signaled. This is it. This isn't going to end one way, because he knows he's going up against Legio Mortis and their Imperator, the Aquila Ignis. So, you know, he knows up against that kind of firepower, those kind of odds. You know, that they don't have a Titan that's able to stand up to it. So he knows they're outgunned because of what's happened before. But he's like, no, we're gonna go out and we're gonna do this. So it's, you know, as I said, it's that moment where you go, good work.
That's it. It's like, we're either going to stop this or we're going to die trying and make them regret it, which is cool. And he's had plenty of simulation time, so he's ready.
Oh, he's itching to get at it.
Meanwhile, underground, where there's nothing to worry about in this tunnel.
The safest tunnel. Don't worry, you're only having a panic attack. There's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Sorry, what's that behind me?
What's that noise? Dalia and the others are trapped in the smashed carriage as the Kaban machine rides up and down the tracks, scanning for life forms. Dalia can see it out the window and is horrified to see all this ground up flesh in its tracks. She feels guilty now. She's dragged her friends to their deaths for some half-baked theory of a mystical being living underground, and takes a moment to reflect on her past, where she was once transcribing data and feeling the regret, things she will now never experience. And now we get some really good little callbacks, like for those who've obviously read the other books, and a little bit of a callback. Because obviously she's been reading all these reports that have come in from the Great Crusade and stuff. So and she's got the imagination and the good memory, so she knows what sort of everything should look like. And she's now never going to experience like the oceans of Lorraine, which she's probably doing. I don't know. You don't want to go there?
Probably one to avoid. You know, Laren and the Emperor's Children is no place to be.
No. She's never going to find out more about the Carnival of Light on Sarosh. Don't want to do that one either. Descent of Angels.
I think we can leave that one alone.
Yeah. She really enjoyed reading the lively tales of the battles, such as one on the victory on Murder.
Yeah, a good one to read about, not necessarily a place to visit.
Yeah. And she's never going to see a sculpt again by the famous sculptor Delafour.
No
one's going to see anymore.
That one's long gone.
Yeah. Or read any poems by the pompous Carcassonne.
Yeah, that's probably the closest one to being fair. All right, fine.
Yeah, but I mean, he was so pompous, he got his brains blown out.
He did. Yeah.
So some good callbacks there. I like that.
Yeah, it shows the remembrances at the front of the Great Crusade are almost like celebrities to the civilian folk.
Yeah, I want to know if like how much for longer she would have had to sit doing her old job before she found out what happened to these lot.
Yeah, Jesus.
Anyway, nostalgia aside, Dalia reaches out with her mind and is able to connect with the Kaban machine and looks inside it and sees the beauty in its design. She can see the genius of Lucas Crom in its design and feel its sentience. It was sentient and had to learn as all other living beings did, and had to process its thoughts in the same way. So Dalia realized this means it could be fooled too. So she looked for its neural pathway and blocked its ability to process incoming senses for its auspex. So when it did scan the area that Dalia's crew was in, it couldn't see them. She could sense the machine's confusion as it scanned and rescanned them, but not seeing them. Realizing that it knew that they were there, she created a tremor with her mind further along the tunnel. Immediately, it turned and fired upon the false reading, obliterating the already dead bodies, and Dalia allowed the fake life readings to fade away. It scanned them again, and when it couldn't sense any more life, it decided it must have killed everyone on board. Task completed, it turned and rolled along the tunnel once more. Dalia saw it transmit a data report confirming its mission success back to its masters. Once it was out of sensor range, Dalia relaxed and allowed herself to leave the realm of her mind and return to her body. Immediately overwhelmed by the sight and smell of death, the others sigh in relief, and Romu tells them to sort themselves out and move before the machine realizes its mistake and comes back. The Fabricator General assessed the incoming message from the Kaban machine with satisfaction. He was still reveling in his newfound power and enjoying the new discoveries coming from within the vaults every day to join the Dark Mechanicum, a term that Melgator had come up with. He looks out across his twisted factorum and at his new army, which was amassing below. Behind him stood Regulus, Melgator, and Urtzi Marvelous, next to holographic projections of Lucas Crom and Princeps Camelos. Dalia Cytheria is dead, he said proudly, and complimented Chrome on the skill of his assassin and the Kaban machine itself. Turning to Camulus, he told him to send word to the allies and let their engines walk and crush the enemies. Turning to the others, he announced, "This is the day that Mars casts away from the grip of terror. Unleash your armies and stain the sands of Mars red with blood." End of part 2.
There we go. Everything is coming up, coming to a boil as the sides are drawn from the forges. They know where they're at now. The legios are, the Dark Mechanicum legios have been set on their path. What's his name? The Tempest Lord Cavallero is he's doing the same. So that's going to go toe to toe. Tyrannus has already pledged itself to defend the Magma City. So we've got a House of Knights defending that. And then deep underground somewhere, we've got this AI killing machine rolling around, and our plucky band of engineers.
Yeah.
Bit injured, not a bit bruised.
Still alive, though.
They're still alive, but no real option to keep going to find what they're looking for, and obviously probably questions that they may have about Dalia's burgeoning powers.
Oh yeah. Well, that's it. Like, they're not going to know how they survived that, because obviously it was all done very hush hush.
A lot of questions could come up.
Yeah. So yeah, part 2 done. So now we know we're going to get some Titan fights. We're going to see some big battle scenes in part 3. It's all going to come to a head. We're going to find out what's down in the labyrinth.
We are, yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to finishing it, wrapping up the first part of the heresy, I guess, in a way.
I think so, because this is, what is this, book 9? Book 9? Yeah. So it's kind of after this one, we get the first
anthology.
Anthology collection, which is kind of a bit of a palate cleanser. It's kind of like, whew, like this has all happened. What do we go into after that? And it kind of goes off on a different tangent. We've even now, most of the books have been very beginning of the heresy.
Yeah.
We're right at we're still right at the start, and we're still getting all of the flavor and the lore that's coming at the start. With the anthology we've got coming, we'll get a bit of a palate cleanser, a bit of a few things out of sequence, which I think is a bit nice to have. But yeah, this is Mechanicum's one of those. It's definitely one that it grows on me. The more I read it, the more enjoyable it is. To begin with, it's a real change of pace, and you have to get into it. But we're coming up to part 3, and I can't wait to get into it with the all of the stuff that happens, because there's loads of cool battles. There's loads of good stuff to talk about, and then there's even more to be unveiled about the mysteries of what could be down in the Noctis labyrinth.
Yeah, well, that's it. Now we've built up, and now we're all going to get the payoff. I hope that everyone's enjoying coming along with us on this and listening to us try and work out what the hell's going on, and my great pronunciations.
I think that's part of the joy.
Yeah. So look forward to part 6 of this series. Maybe we'll get it done in one. I don't know.
We might be able to get it done in one long one. I would say. I reckon we'll schedule some time and just get part 3 done.
Yeah.
And then we can at least say it took us six parts to get this done.
Yeah.
Rather than 7.
Oh, 7's the magic number, the holy number for the Nurgle.
Nurgle, isn't it? Yeah. I don't know. It's the Dark Mechanicum. They probably don't have a sacred number, because I don't necessarily follow the Chaos God at this point.
Oh, it's all 0s and 1s, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say it's binary, right?
Maybe the odd 2. I don't know.
Well, maybe that's it. Maybe that's their Chaos number. It's 2 because it shouldn't appear in binary.
Well, that's it. Yeah. Cool. So thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. I go for it every time. We're on Instagram. Make sure you're following us on there for all our updates and what's going on. If you're listening to us, do check us out on YouTube, and do check out our video podcast as well. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and all those good places if you want to come and have a chat. You can listen to us on Spotify on the go. We're on Twitch. We're on Patreon. Check the link in the description below for Element Games. When you get your hobby stuff, you get a discount using our code. And also there's some combat cards, Iron and Ceramite for Shane and Glenn, who are reigning 1 and 2. Try and get them off of there.
We did have someone.
Did
joined, but he's left again. He went number 1 for a period of time.
Completed it, mate. He's done.
That's it.
Easy.
He was there. He left. I managed to knock him off top spot before he left, but
that's it.
Couldn't have that.
No. I wouldn't want it that way. I mean, I've given up. I've long given up, but I'm glad that you and Glenn are still smacking people about.
Yeah, plugging away.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much, Shane, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, absolutely.
As always, we would like to thank you for listening to our Iron and Ceramite podcast. If you liked us, then you can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and any other good podcast services. Just remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.